see myself. There I am. Insane in the membrane. Insane in Ukraine. Insane in the membrane. Am I on? Insane in the membrane. Insane in Ukraine. All right, I am on. Okay, good to go here. Good to go. Hi, everybody. If anybody's in here, say hello. Tony D with today's topic, early live stream, 2 p.m. live stream. Normally it's on Sunday. I had to do Saturday because I am doing, of course, Nerd Fest at Swedesboro Holiday Inn tomorrow from 10 to 4. Ergo Cinema, hey, welcome back to me. Welcome back to you. There he is. Thank you, Ergo, for tuning in. We're going to talk about the Ukraine today and all the stuff I know about it. I do kind of know about some stuff about the Ukraine. I'm not totally unversed in the subject. I have done a bit of research doing the anti-war comic, which let's see, it's not up today. Let's see if it's up. I think I put it up today. That's yesterday's comic, Tales of Pizza. Yeah, this is Penty the Pentagon, one of the characters in the anti-war comic. So if you want to check that out, check out the Webcomic Factory at thewebcomicfactory.com. So that should be fun. I can't show it to you because I'm using SteamYard so I can see your comments. So I got to upgrade my SteamYard. So check out my other videos today because I will be doing a video about the Pineys. Book 8 is about to drop. So I'll be premiering the cover if you want to see the cover for book 8 before anybody else. So tune into that. But let's get into the Ukraine and its history and what's going on there today. And we could tie it in the screenwriting, of course, because as I covered in Hollywoke Hot Take a couple of days ago, there's few things going on in the Ukraine connected to the movie industry. One is the Ukrainian movie industry. There was an article, I think, in Variety or Hollywood Reporter saying that everybody's taking it on the chin because, we can't produce movies in the Ukraine. Oh, no. Which is an issue, I guess, because the Ukraine would be a place to shoot a movie like you would shoot one in Romania or any other Baltic countries if they were stable, because the labor would be dirt cheap. Everything would be dirt cheap. The only thing you wouldn't have is access to, a lot of fancier stuff and plus the travel, right? But everything else is cheap. Once you're there, if you're there for 4 or 5 months shooting a movie, it's dirt cheap. Dirt cheap. So you shoot some movie like that Mickey Rourke movie War Hunt, which I was trying to push to nominate for an Oscar, which would have been hilarious. I wish that hashtag had taken off. Oh, that would have been great. Anyhow, that's a perfect movie to shoot in Romania. They probably got a few castles. You could blow up stuff. You don't really need if Alec Baldwin wanted to shoot somebody, if he had done it in the Ukraine, it probably wouldn't have been a problem, quite frankly. Not to make light of that death, but to make light of Alec Baldwin. The Ukraine, probably a good place to shoot a movie if you don't need any particular sets and you could just build them. Wild West probably be good to shoot in the Ukraine because it's a lot of empty fields and mountains, and you can't just instantly tell unless it's very specific. The other downside would be the weather, of course. This time of year you couldn't shoot much unless you were shooting some kind of snowbound movie or a war movie or whatever. It's almost not worth it to go there just to use a sound stage because the equipment's probably not as good, and God knows the electricity and the infrastructure is probably not as good. And then you got the language barrier, but in terms of shooting stuff outside, if you catch the good weather, it's not bad. And it's cheap. So there's that. Then, of course, Sean Penn threw himself in the middle of this somehow. He just came out of nowhere. It was like, Sean Penn's in the Ukraine shooting a documentary. And I'm like, okay. So apparently he's there doing his thing. looking concerned and wearing a flak jacket. I mean, he's actually in a bit of danger this time. I mean, it's not like Haiti where, yeah, there's some danger, but it's not like there was a war. I mean, the Russians, I mean, they blow up a building. They don't know if Sean Penn's in it or not, and I was thinking it would be hilarious if he had like a flak jacket, how the jackets say things like press, or, it's got like a Red Cross thing on it, that Sean Penn would wear one that says celebrity. So that, it's like some Russian sniper eyeing him up. Oh no, it's a celebrity. We can't shoot that guy. And what was the other thing? I think that was about it. Oh, and then of course we'll get into it here. The celebrities here, going on and on. Suddenly they're all interested in geopolitical politics. Suddenly they have an opinion on the Ukraine, because they know so much. Celebrities know so much. They look at Twitter every day. Those people crack me up. But let's get into the history a little bit, so I know a little bit about Ukrainian history. And this is a very general thing. I don't claim to be an expert, but a lot of people, I think, in this country, unless you happen to be Ukrainian or know someone who is, they don't really understand just how much the Ukrainians hate the Russians. And they hate them, and I'm not saying they're hateful people. It's not a racist thing. No, they have every reason to hate and mistrust the Russians and fight to the death to save the Ukraine. So you go back to the days of Stalin, or even right before, but mainly Stalin. He starved the Ukrainians, and understand that the Ukraine was the breadbasket of that region, right? It had tons of farms, and it fed the region however far that could reach, say in the 10s and 20s, 1910s and 20s, 19, I gotta say 19 now. But then came Stalin and the Soviets, and the commies, they centralized everything, and just like the Chinese would years later, they starved everybody because everything had to be given to the state to distribute. No one could sell things. If you were buying and selling stuff, or even just trading stuff, no, you're bourgeois, any successful farmer. Jordan Peterson has a great video on it where he describes it, and because he's very well read on this stuff. So he says, imagine, a village, in the 20s, an agrarian village. And most 90% of the people there are hardworking farmers. Hey, JEC. Hardworking farmers. JEC is here, ladies and gentlemen. Good logo. I like his logo. Hardworking farmers, because you had to be a farmer in the 10s and 20s, 1910s and 20s. And so most people work. And then there's like a tiny portion of the population. All they do is they sit in the bars, and they're drunks, and they're retrobates, and they kind of work, but they don't really. They only work because they kind of have to, or mostly they're thieves, and they're just the worst people, right? And then the communists come into the village, and they say, you see all the people? You drew your logo? Wow, that's a nice logo. That's sharp. So the commies come in, and they say to these retrobates, you see those successful farmers over there? They stole from you. They're bourgeois. You deserve that farm. You deserve all that food and wealth and a house, even though, of course, the farmers did all that work to get it. The communists are telling them, oh, why don't you have that? And so these are the people who, these scumbags are recruited by the communists, because you got to be pretty much a scumbag to join the Communist Party, right? Because you have nothing, and the communists are promising you everything. Promising you, oh, you're not going to have to work. You're not going to have to work. No, everybody deserves everything whenever they want it, whenever. So those people join the Communist Party, and the next thing you know, they're denouncing them, and All the most productive people get attacked. And that's how the entire economy, society unravels. So and this is what happened in the Soviet Union and in the Ukraine. They destroyed all the most productive farmers, and they handed their farms, centrally distributed by the commissars who know so much. The commies hand out the farms, and these people have never farmed in their life. They don't know what they're doing. So what happens? They screw everything up. They let fields go to fallow. They plant in the wrong time. They harvest too early. There's a million things to go. I've done a little bit of farming. My dad does tons of it, so I'm on the outskirts of it. He used to make me do stuff. He still kind of does, but there's an art to it. You got to know what you're doing. You got to plan at the right time. You can't, like right now. Let's see, what time of year is this? This is going in the spring. The first thing my dad will plant will be, I believe, the string beans are first. String beans and peas, legumes. They get in now. They're the earliest ones. And as it gets warmer, he'll plant other things. But if you don't know what you're doing, like if you were to plant, I don't know, tomatoes now, you're done. They die. First cold snap, kill them all. So you got to know what you're doing. So these commies ruined the farms. Then people were short on food, and the shortages got worse and worse and worse and worse until finally they were arresting people. There were people going into the fields. They were so hungry, picking up the little grains of wheat or rice that have been left behind from the harvest. And people were going to the gulag for that. And then starvation got so bad that they put up signs saying, "Don't eat your children." So think about that. You're living in the Ukraine under the thumb of the communists, and they're posting, you're starving, and they have to post signs saying, "Don't eat your own children. Don't eat your children. Don't eat children." That's how bad it was. And the Ukrainians were on the bottom and the Russians were on the top because the Russians ran everything in the Soviet Union. And so I'm sure there were a handful of Ukrainians who got on board with the program and did okay, but mostly it was Russian. The Russians wanted to, export Russians to the region, and they did, which is why the eastern provinces of the Ukraine, which I think I got a map here. Oh, I can't show it to you. So if you look at if you look at a map of the Ukraine and you look at the Donbas province, and I forget the name of the other one, these are the Russian separatists are there. And they're Russian. They speak Russian because they've been there for at least 3 generations, maybe more. I mean, you go back to the 1920s, maybe. So these people identify as Russians. They speak Russian. And during the Soviet Union, it was Russia. You spoke Russian. If you spoke Ukrainian, you were considered some kind of brain dead hillbilly who didn't deserve the time of day. You wouldn't get the jobs, you wouldn't get the promotions, whatever. And so the Ukrainians were pushed further and further west. I believe it's more mountainous further west. They had less farmland, but so they're starving, they're being pushed out of their land, they're being marginalized in every conceivable way. And there's nothing the Ukrainians could do. So then World War II comes around, and they hate the Russians so much. The Ukrainian resistance sides with the bad guys from World War II, who I won't name because we're on YouTube, and YouTube has a stick up its butt about certain words. Anyhow, you know who I'm talking about. And so one of the national heroes in the Ukraine from that time period is a guy by the name of Banera, who joined up with the bad guys from Germany and fought alongside of them. And I think he got a pretty high rank, like colonel or something. He had like a battalion of those guys fighting against the Soviets because they hated him. And, when you look at it that way, when you look at the history, you can understand, right? I mean, what are the Ukrainians supposed to do? Join up with the Soviets and die? And because Stalin was not even good to his own troops. It's amazing he stayed in power after the war anyway, because he was so brutal. When the Russians or the Soviets would go to prison camps in the bad guys from Germany, the Soviets would not send any money, no food, no support, nothing. They starved them because Stalin was like, fight to the death, do not surrender. And if you surrender, F you. And then even when these guys came back after fighting for the Soviets, a lot of them were thrown right into the gulag. So Stalin was just absolutely brutal. And part of this is the fallout, right? So the Ukrainians remember this. They have a long history with the Russians. And look, post-Soviet Ukrainians aren't exactly fans of the Russians. I mean, I'm sure, people die off and history, moves forward. So to some extent, maybe it's not as bad as it would have been, say, I don't know, 20 years ago. But, the Russians did take the Crimea. But if they hadn't taken the Crimea, by force officially, and they didn't really, and understand, they didn't really take it by force officially. Again, it was another area. It was chock full of Russians. The choice was, well, do we join the Russian Federation or do we stay with the Ukrainians who, the economy is just tanking and the Russians want us badly and we can leverage that to get something, so it's their choice. And I get it. Putin probably would have taken the Crimea either way. He needed, and this is another big thing about it, Putin needs warm water ports for his nuclear subs, right? He doesn't have any. The Crimea was the first one he basically took back, although he still had it. He needs that warm water port because all his other ports freeze in the winter, I believe. Now, maybe global warming, one of them's a little thought out or whatever. Maybe the technology is such it doesn't matter anymore, but they need a warm water port. So if you look at the places on Earth where the Russians need their ports or have a port, one is the Crimea. The other is in Syria, which is why they defended Syria. They're a Syrian ally. They need that port. That's probably, arguably, their most important port, the one in Syria, because it's so far west. And it gives them quick access to the Atlantic Ocean. And so if there's going to be a nuclear war and you're going to have a deterrent, you need these things, or else, what are you going to do when the Americans threaten you in the winter? Go pound sand. I mean, the Russians understand how we work. We slowly move up and move up and move up. And then suddenly we're like pushing for democracy in your country. And then our guy, of course, is the guy who is all about democracy. Oh, your guy, he's a fascist. We don't want him. And then we overthrow your country and then we steal all the resources. So the Russians don't want that. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, they were made certain promises. And one of them was that they wouldn't expand NATO. And then we did. I forget who joined after that. It was like 2 or 3 countries. And that, but like the Ukraine is right on their border. So this would be like, imagine the Cold War. The Russians or the Soviets already had Cuba. So imagine they talked the Mexican government, into, hey, join the Soviet Union. And the Mexicans were like, well, this sounds like a pretty good deal. Like, we wouldn't tolerate that. We wouldn't even tolerate the negotiations. So, do I feel for the Ukrainian people? Oh, absolutely. They've suffered horribly. But do I think we should risk World War III? No. And part of the problem is we intervene so much. You know, I want the Ukrainians to win. I really do. I want them to achieve independence, but I don't think we should help them. In fact, we'd probably just make everything worse. I mean, if you could somehow set aside World War III erupting, which is still a possibility, by the way. One of the things I looked up right before the live stream is the Ukrainians did have nukes in their country, like 1,700 of them the Soviets had in the Ukraine. And the Ukrainians say they destroyed them all. Did they? Maybe they still have some. We don't know. I would bet money there's still some loose nukes floating around the Ukraine. And I don't know if the President Zelensky knows, or maybe it's another group or whatever. I mean, it's possible they're all destroyed. It's possible they don't have the capability of launching them or whatever. But, you know, who knows? They may still have a nuke. Imagine they set one off and, you know, they get some secret Ukrainian guy to do a suicide mission to Moscow and set one off. Oh, it's on. It's on. Yeah, I guess. I mean, sure. I mean, the separatists. I mean, the Ukraine. I believe there was some fighting. Apparently, there was armed conflict in Ukraine since 2014. Yeah. You know, crap. Doing a live stream. I can't answer the phone call. Here, I'll give him a standard. Can I call you later thing? Let's see if it's an emergency. No, called me from a landline. So whatever. There's been armed conflict, but you know, a bunch of Russian separatists going at it to Ukrainians. I mean, this kind of stuff simmers all the time. You know, the tanks didn't really roll. I mean, they rolled in 2014, but there wasn't like a fight like this. I mean, this is like an official war. So I think it's a little different, but you know, and look, everything I'm about to tell you, but from some of these articles, take it with a grain of salt, because, you know, there's a lot of propaganda out there. You know, the 13 Ukrainians who died on Snake Island. I mean, we don't know. They're saying that, you know, they told the Russians to go F themselves. They might have. Or it could be that the Russians just bombed the place and killed them, and then, you know, some deep stater put together this scenario and recording and video, and then put that out there for the Ukrainians, or the Ukrainians could have done it. You know, there's another story about the Ghost of Kiev, I think they're calling him, like a fighter pilot that's gone up and shot down like 3 or 4 Russian planes. Who knows? Who knows? It's strange to me how many people share war stories on social media. Yeah. You know, YouTuber Coach Red Pill, he's actually in the Capitol right now. He is? I've seen him, been making videos, says things are calm, still has power and water, hasn't heard any explosions. Wow, I'm shocked, because I did see some footage where there appeared to be explosions. But then again, a lot of people share political stories these days. Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? So let's get into some of these stories, which may or may not be propaganda. Ukrainian President Zelensky shows himself in Kiev, motivates Ukrainians to fight. This is from CD Media. And then somebody in Twitter posting a picture of the president in a flak jacket with an army helmet. He's all ready to go. I do believe he's fighting, probably because he doesn't have a choice. I mean, this guy was a stand-up comic, I believe, or comedian, you know, and that's how he became president of the Ukraine, because he was famous and people liked him. So I guess it's kind of like, I don't know, electing Chris Rock as your president during a time of war. I don't know. Chris Rock would be okay. Get your MF out there and shoot some Russians. But I don't know. It feels very astroturfed. Zelensky as a heroic figure in the Ukraine. I don't know. I don't know if he, I do believe he's there, but I don't think the Russians would kill him. I don't think the Russians would target him because it would be probably a bad PR for them. It would look bad if they killed him, especially if they killed his family. And it would make him a martyr. I don't think they want that. Hollywood ain't my baby. I'd vote for Chris Rock, LOL. Yeah, who wouldn't? I was going to say, wasn't the president a television personality? The whole thing feels more like Wag the Dog. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And all these articles are coming out. But there may be so many propaganda pieces that it just feels that way. Because I've always had kind of a radio voice, even when I did radio in college, I didn't really have to practice all that much. The only thing I had to enunciate a little better, but and then I had to do the thing that Howard Stern had to learn, WNBC. But a lot of people have said to me, I don't think you're insincere, but you sound insincere sometimes. And so that may be the kind of thing. There may be so much propaganda that it some of the stuff that's true just doesn't ring true, but it does feel very astroturfed to me. But you can't trust the media here. You definitely can't trust the media over there. And I'm not a reporter. I can't get on the ground there. I don't even trust Sean Penn. I mean, maybe Coach Red Pill, but I don't know. It's really tough. And then here's an article from Red State. Marco Rubio hints that he has info something is amiss with Putin. Okay. Not sure what that's all about, but I really don't trust Mark Rubio. Biden prepares to deploy U.S. Border Patrol agents to assist with Ukraine border crossings in Poland. Meanwhile, U.S. southern border remains wide open. And that, to me, was the biggest outrageous headline. And I think that one's 100% true. Biden's taking our Border Patrol agents who are supposed to be on our border and shipping them off to Poland to help the Ukrainians. Border Patrol agents doesn't mean that they're there to help people across the border. They're there to protect the border and screen people. Do Russian soldiers use social media? I don't know. I would imagine that Putin's got a pretty tight lockdown on that. Things are starting to lock down pretty tightly on this side of the world in terms of the military with their social media. I can't imagine anyone in the Russian army touching social media unless it's like on the down low secretly. They're not going to mess around. When you're number one, you can let people do stupid things, right? We have a stupid woke military. I'm sure they're going to be painting the tanks pink any day now, and putting their pronouns on a medal and giving away, gender medals or whatever. But you can afford to do that to some extent when you're number one because you've got the luxury to waste money and time. The Russians don't have that luxury. They've got to get their act together. And they've been planning this for a while because when you're number two, baby, or I guess the Russians would technically be number three. Kind of hard to tell these days. You got to get your act together. Not only just to stay number two, but so someday you could be number one. I mean, that's what Putin wants his legacy to be, that he wins this geopolitical chess match. And in the end, Russia's the top dog in the world and they run things. But, ultimately, the Russians are not us. Their system, despite the fact that it's way better than the old communist system, people keep screaming all over social media, oh no, the USSR is coming back. Putin's not stupid. He's not going to bring the USSR back because he knows that system didn't work. Now he looks at China, he sees their system. Their system works up to a point, but they're still communist and they still have a lot of problems. So he understands, he looks at the West and he goes, I want that money and I want to keep that money, which is why we should have made peace with Russia during Trump's era. And we could have, he would have made money, but he also would have been sucked into the stuff we're into. Like Russia has anti-war protesters. Yeah, they're being arrested, but it's like the 60s over there. They're cracking heads and throwing people in jail, and I'm sure they're not being nice to the anti-war protesters. But the fact that they have a movement at all tells you they're not the communists. The communists don't arrest anti-war protesters; they murder them. They run them over with tanks. They do a media blackout, and then they shoot everybody. That's not what a federation, whatever the hell they are, oligarchy does. They have to be more cognizant of their PR situation because they're not full-blown communists. They can't just throw everybody in jail and kill them. They can throw people in jail for a while. They can make their lives miserable. They can do horrible things. And the level of horribleness, though, the top dogs are always the communists. They're the worst because they can just kill you or torture you, kill your family, whatever. There's nothing holding the communists back from doing the most horrible things you can think of. But in a federation that's semi-democratized and has different factions, it's more decentralized, there are more repercussions. There's no repercussions for Xi Jinping. Almost none. So that's the difference. But so Biden deploying our border patrol agents to Poland is just sickening to me. Daily Mail, exodus of women. Richard Pendlebury on the Polish border sees fleeing mothers and children torn from fathers forced to fight in the Ukraine as thousands of families head west to seek safety from Putin's planes and tanks. And this very much sounds like propaganda. Is it untrue? No, it's not a lie, like a total lie. Yeah, there's refugees going across into Poland. Obviously, there's like 100,000 of them at last count. But are they all crying widows? A lot of them are. I would assume, but not all of them. The men tend to do the fighting. Some of the women stayed behind, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, who's going to go across the border? Well, who would you send across the border to safety if the United States got invaded by fascist Canada, let's say? Well, you'd send, old people. You'd send sick people, people who couldn't fight or defend themselves. You would send them first. So, this is who you send. You would send young children and their mothers. So, yes, it's true, but it's also propaganda. It's also putting the focus on them to say, oh, isn't this terrible? The Russians are bad. The Russians are bad. Here's a celebrity headline. Sherlock star Amanda Abington to celebrities making sanctimonious posts about the Ukraine. Just be quiet and shut the F up. Well, thank you, Amanda Abington. Finally, somebody said it who's sort of in Hollywood. She's more of an English actress, so not quite in Hollywood, sort of, kind of, yes. But shut the F up. Shut the F up. The only one who could talk about the Ukraine are people, number one, who are Ukrainian, right? If you're a Ukrainian celebrity, I totally understand why you would talk about the Ukraine and say, oh, God, save the Ukraine. If you're Russian, maybe you say something, although you probably shouldn't. if you have relatives, if you're Ukrainian with relatives there, obviously you want them safe. Even if you're Russian, you may want them safe. But just your general rando celebrity who's got, you say like, oh, I this is terrible, war is terrible. I hope this stops soon. That's about as much as you should be saying at this point. Drilling down into the specifics and blaming, this guy or that guy, unless you know what you're talking about, you should probably stay out of it, celebrities. Sean Penn, I mean, he's there. Sure. He gets pass. He said stuff about the Haiti. He was there. I could respect that. I could at least, I wouldn't agree with half the stuff he would say, but at least the guy went to Haiti. He probably knows more than me. This guy went to the Ukraine. He probably knows a lot more details than me. I'm just analyzing it from here. Right, Joan? Right. She thinks I'm full of it. Anyhow, yes, good on her. Just shut the F up, celebrities. For the most part. Another Daily Mail. We survived the night. The occupiers wanted to capture our capital. We broke their idea. Zelensky's warning shot to Putin as noose tightens around Kiev. Ukrainian civilian death toll hits 198 and missile hits tower block. Yeah, it's not good. Let's see. Ergo Media. I think the great man theory in history has already been disproven. Yeah, but it's still got mileage for. Zelensky. You got to hand it to the guy. We're going to see at the end of all this whether or not it was all astroturf or if he was genuinely a guy who said, "I'm going to die for my country." I could see it because of the history of the Ukraine. I could see that. Certainly I would be like, if I was Ukrainian, grew up and knew that history. Let's see, I would have been under Stalin until I was in my 30s. No, I would have been under the Soviets until I was in my 30s. Stalin was already dead. And then the wall goes down. So yeah, I'd totally be there. Oh my God. I do a live stream and then my phone's blowing up. Now, hold on. I got to tell these guys I'm doing a live stream. Can't until after 3. It's my daily game of terraforming Mars. Sorry. So yeah, I can see it. I could see that Zelensky maybe generally wants to die for his country. Well, he doesn't want to die, but he wants to defend his country. But at the same time, when I stack up the Russians versus the Ukrainians, sticks and hammers, the Ukrainians have more veterans, hardened veterans. I guess that's true. But the Russians have some, and they just have way more stuff. Okay, so the Ukrainians can make it a bloody mess for them. And they are. I've seen civilians throwing Molotov cocktails at the transports that the Russians are using. But, at some point, the Russians are just going to go, we've lost too many guys, or if we're going to take this city, we have to carpet bomb it and kill half the people and then roll in there when they're all demoralized and starving. Nobody wants that. I don't think even the Russians want that. They're trying to, the word is, I don't know who posted it. Somebody posted it. Someone said that the Russians wanted to take the place in 3 days. And, now that they're not, they're frustrated. But again, that could be propaganda. I don't know. The Russians they're tough. I'll say that. The Russians are tough. These guys drink vodka like it's water. They have the numbers, I think. But if they got to kill every Ukrainian civilian, that's not going to look good on the international stage for Putin. If it turns into, if they could start spinning it as a genocide and they've got real pictures and it's validated, that could really turn against them. And look, the Chinese are fronting the money for this, at least according to Sticks and Hammer. And if the Chinese cut them off, and they could, the Chinese have stabbed the Russians in the back before, then the Russians are in real trouble. So there's a balance here. I think ultimately, maybe Putin, if he was smart, he'd just take the eastern provinces that he wants and say, okay, they're independent republics. I've recognized them. Now we're going to protect them. And that's it. And we're going to negotiate a peace deal and we get these provinces, or they get independence, meaning they become part of the Russian Federation, but they're, it's like they're 2 extra states for the Russians. And the Ukrainians are like, okay, we historically drove you away or whatever. And then the United States will continue to push to get the Ukraine into NATO, which is apparently what they are dying for. I don't know why. Let's see. At Breitbart, Brennan, John Brennan, remember this guy who lied to Congress? Putin badly miscalculated on the Ukraine invasion. No, he didn't. And I think that's propaganda right there for the Democrats. He's saying that because he's countering what Trump is saying. Trump's saying he's a genius. It's a genius move, I would say. Yeah. I mean, he can do this now because Biden's weak. Biden doesn't have the money or the will to go in there. He doesn't have the guts to confront him. And Trump has said this in interviews, he would have bombed Moscow or something. He would have threatened to bomb Moscow, and that probably would have been enough. Putin doesn't want a World War III. Trump would have called his bluff, or at least pretended to. And Biden's just weak. I mean, even if Biden did that, I still wouldn't believe him. If Biden said, I'll bomb Moscow. That's how you say it. I'll bomb. Let me get my Joe Biden glasses on. Mm-hmm. Hey, after this, I'll bomb the Moscows. I'll bomb them. And I'm having a good hair day. I'm just going to say it. I'm having a great hair day. One of those days you get up and you don't wash your hair. That's what I'm having. It's just flowing, looking great. And I got to say, the aviators help. Right, doggy? Yeah, she don't know. Anyhow, Biden. No, Biden can't do S. And Brennan, I hate that guy. I wish they'd go after him. I hope one day they catch up to Brennan and throw him in prison, or at least arrest him for his. You talking about the Ukraine? Yes, we're talking about the Ukraine. Sorry, I got off track here with some political stuff. You're bald? Oh, well, you're always having a good hair day, technically, because it always looks great, right? I mean, you look exactly as bald as you are every day. I'm Italian, and my dad has great hair, so I'm planning on having hair till they put me into the ground or take me out. China, according to Fox, says it supports Russia amid Ukraine invasion, backs Putin's claim he's ready for negotiations. Bold and bald. Ha ha ha. Nice. Oh boy, I got all kinds of comments now. Let's see. Beat the Dead. Welcome. Trigonometry had a good episode about the Ukrainian situation. I have to say it. Everybody's doing something about the Ukraine today, last couple of days. How do you see this conflict ending? Apparently, Germany is pumping weapons into the Ukraine for defense. It's hard to say, but I didn't see it really starting. What I saw was Putin would go in to the separatist states and just station his guys at the border and say, these guys are independent now. What are you going to do? So I guess he's trying for more land. So I guess it's sort of like the big ask. He's going to smack Ukraine around, show him he means business, and then say, okay, I'll negotiate. We get these provinces and go F yourself. That's what I'm seeing now, but I don't know. It's a fluid situation. If he's too embarrassed by the losses, and then he doubles down and says, no, we're gonna beat the Ukrainians to into submission, then we'll negotiate and we'll take way more land, or the whole thing. I don't know. I don't think he'll take the whole thing, but I hope not. I hope he doesn't go in that direction. I hope at some point he just says, okay, let's negotiate. We get the Donbass and whatever the other province is. I hope they can hold out until someone grows some balls actually to help them. Well, be careful what you wish for, because, I don't want to start World War III over this. And in fact, I don't think we should be involved at all. I think we're just making it worse to even comment on it, to, send NATO troops. No. Look, what we should have done, there we go. In my humble opinion, nothing will help if the aggressor doesn't lay down arms. Well, look, the Russians back in 91, 92 were promised we wouldn't expand NATO, and we did. So that's a big FU to the Russians. They didn't get it in writing, which they should have, because official treaties at least mean something on the world stage. So even all the way up until this point, the Russians were saying, if you promise us on paper that Ukraine will never enter into NATO, then I think this would have been avoided. Now, if it had happened anyway, you'd still be in the same position and you would have lost nothing. In fact, we would have gained, because now we could say, aha, the Russians broke a treaty. We kept our end of the bargain. It's the Russians who did it. Now, the Russians, they do have a valid point. We promised we wouldn't expand NATO, and we did. Everyone's agreed, oh no, the Ukrainians are not entering NATO. That's because they really want the Ukrainians to enter NATO, and then they're going to put missiles there right on the Russians' doorstep. I mean, what would you do? Again, what would you do if the Russians cut a deal with Mexico and said, oh, well, we're going to put some missiles there now, or Canada, or whatever? You wouldn't want that. So, and this isn't a support for Putin. I think he's a jerk. I wouldn't want to live in Russia, corrupt Russia. But that all being said, we should just stay out of it at this point. We've done enough. We shouldn't have built up the Ukraine because, keep in mind, it was Biden who gave the Ukrainians like $1 billion, and not for nothing, the Ukrainians, part of their army are bad guys from Germany, the new version of that, which I can't say on YouTube. What do you want, Joan? You want to get down? Okay. Say goodbye to Joan, everybody. Oh, cutie. She doesn't know anything about the Ukraine. So what are you going to do? You're going to support the Ukrainians. You're technically supporting the new bad guys from Germany. Now, yeah, Zelensky seems like a reasonable guy, but he's not going to live forever, right? What if those bad guys from Germany types keep growing in power, and then eventually they take over the country politically? Then guess what you have? Yeah, we don't want that. Now you could argue, well, that could happen if we don't intervene. Look, lots of things can happen if we don't do things, but do you want to be partly responsible? Do you want to fund these guys? Do we even have the money to be throwing around to the Ukraine? No, it's not in our interest to be even involved. So, we could do diplomacy if we didn't have a potato for president, or Blinken. I mean, Blinken's almost as bad, although at least he's kind of coherent, but he's just terrible. So what are you going to do? I mean, Trump, he knows where the levers of power are. He knew how to sanction the Russians. He sanctioned Nord Stream 2, and that was a big deal for them. So the Russians backed off. There are other ways you could sanction the Russians that they would back off, or you just negotiate with them. The easiest thing to do would have been say, okay, we won't let them go in NATO. Here's a treaty. We're good. And that would have at least bought you, years, years of calm. It would be unlikely the Russians would say, okay, at least we have that agreement, but they'd still be going at it, more with subterfuge, right? They'd be looking to influence the political climate in the Ukraine, as would we, and they would offer them resources and whatever to be nice, and so would we, and it would have been more of a proxy thing of us they're trying to get a Russian guy in, we're trying to get, keep a Ukrainian that likes us in, which a lot less people would die. Germany sends rocket launchers. Not sure, but it seems like diplomacy is not on the agenda right now. Yeah, no, it's totally off now. I mean, what are the Russians going to do? Just sit there until we surround them? I mean, this is a superpower. This is an ex-superpower you're talking about. The Russians have nukes. You have to respect them, or else, Fallout 4 in real life. I don't want that. Who the hell wants that? Let's see. What other article did I have? I'm still here. Ukrainian President Zelensky defies Biden's admin call for him to flee Kiev. Yeah, I'm not sure why, because I guess he's their guy. He doesn't want him. They don't want him dead. This is an InfoWars headline, but I think it's valid. Video recordings emerged purporting to show Russian warships killing the Ukrainians on the remote island. So that seems to be a legit thing. More pics at Breitbart of Kiev scarred by battle. And Breitbart's pretty pro-Ukrainian for the most part. Oh, this was a story. Russian space chief warns the International Space Station will plunge from orbit and strike U.S. if Biden sanctions are implemented. Now, that's a bit of a threat. One I do not like. Now, would they do it? I don't think they would. But, yeah, I'm not liking that salty language about that. And certainly, guess what? We have to depend upon the Russians to get our American astronauts off that damn thing. And the big story, of course, we're still buying oil from the Russians. We're still buying energy from these guys. Oh, we're very mad. You're invading the Ukraine. Please sell us more energy. Our prices are so high. Like, this is the potato heads running Washington right now. This is globalism. Oh, yeah, we got a little war brewing. Yeah, we're always going to have a war. It's good for business. Yeah, let the little countries get smacked around. Oh, we're not going to smack around Russia. No, we buy oil for that. We buy oil and they're buying stuff from us. Yeah, we sanction them. Zero Hedge reported the other day we were going to sanction aluminum imports, and then immediately the Biden administration must have realized, wait, we can't sanction that. Undo that. These are the potato heads running the country right now. They're idiots. They're more concerned about their portfolios and their own families and their own money. They don't give a flying F about the Ukraine unless they got interest there. Now, Biden obviously does. His son worked there. They obviously got ties to Burisma. God knows how much bribe money was flowing out of there into his pocket. The other rumor is that much like the biolabs in China, or the biolab in China in Wuhan, there are biolabs in the Ukraine that they were working on stuff too, because there are certain things you're not allowed to experiment with in the United States and I'll say the Western countries because of various rules, because no one wants those deadly diseases to get out and murder an entire city full of people. But apparently, you can still do crazy things in the Ukraine or places that'll let you do it because they need money desperately, so they're willing to take the risk. Oh, you want to put a level 4 biolab in our backyard? Yeah, give us $10 million or whatever it costs. I don't know. So that's one of the rumors. And someone postulated on YouTube, I forget who. Oh gosh, I don't remember. But his theory was that, I think it was on the Lotus Eaters. It was a question, a video question from the Lotus Eaters. I don't remember who said it specifically, but he said, some of the election stuff in 2020, which was, I have to say, totally legitimate, where we have the most popular president ever, honk honk. Anyhow, the rumor this guy said, which I completely disagree with, is that maybe there's some evidence there regarding things that happened. Therefore, the Ukrainians have it, or it might fall in the Russia's hands, which would not be good, right, for Biden if they were true. But they're probably not true, right? I mean, why would that be true? Hate talking this way, but I don't want to get flagged on YouTube. Another headline for Breitbart: Russia's northern neighbors spooked. The Finns buy up iodine tablets and prepare beds for refugees. I don't think that means they're spooked. If anything, they are preparing for what is the inevitable. They're going to have a bunch of refugees coming across the border, and that's nice. They're preparing for them. I don't know if you remember Alexander Vindman. This is a headline from the National File, which I can't show you. Sorry. Vindman blames Ukraine-Russia conflict on January 6th protest, which, as we all know, the January 6th, well, that was the worst day in history. Forget about the Armenian genocide, the Civil War, and all sorts of atrocities that I can't even say on YouTube because for some reason they flag you. No, January 6th, right. Can't really talk about that either on YouTube. How long do you think Ukraine will be able to hold out? Civilians are getting guns in Kiev and everything. It could prove quite bad for Russia. A lot will die. It's hard to say. I mean, I didn't think they would hold out this long because, if it were me, like those 13 guys on the island, yeah, you could tell the Russians to go F themselves, but you'd also just surrender. I mean, why die? Why die for a lost cause? I get it. They're defending their country, but really, was Snake Island all that important to the Ukrainians strategically? My move would have been to surrender, and then if you were going to go out in a blaze of glory, set a bunch of booby traps and then pretend to be friendly, and then when the Russians got close, whip out your guns and start shooting them. At least you take some of those guys with you, or you surrender. It kind of depends on the culture. I think the Ukrainians, they don't want to live under the Russians anymore, ever again, never again. I think that would probably be their mantra. Never again. We're never going to give these a-holes control of us. We'd rather die because of the horror that the Soviets brought us, which really were the Russians from their perspective. And so I can understand why they'd rather go out in a blaze of glory. So if that continues, if the Russians are smart, they'll just call it a day. But, again, it could be a political thing. If Putin doesn't want to look weak either. No, we're going to take the capital. We're going to take the capital. We're going to kill Zelensky, or we're going to capture Zelensky, and we're going to show everybody on the national news, haha, F you, United States. We won, whatever. From JEC, Coach Red Pill was saying a lot of those Ukrainian people who got guns ended up turning them on each other and started shooting each other over old beef from within the country. Yeah, and this is the problem with countries that don't let you have the Second Amendment, right? So all these things are brewing under the surface, and then one day they get a gun, like, haha. So that kind of doesn't surprise me on one hand, but it seems like a weird time to shoot your neighbor when the Russians are coming over the hill. Like, you know, I don't have that kind of beef with my neighbors, but if I did, and I don't know, the Chinese were invading South Jersey, I think it would be the wrong time to turn to my neighbor and go, ha, you borrowed my beach chair. You know, it's like, he might just die in the conflict and then problem solved. But people don't, you know, people are emotional beings. So who the hell knows? I mean, some of these things, you don't know. I mean, in other countries, like old school countries, and I'm old enough to kind of remember the old school, not personal experience with the old school way of doing things. Like if, you know, your sister got sexually assaulted by someone, that you'd go take care of the guy. Like, I wasn't involved in that, but as a little kid, you would hear people talk, and you would understand, like, oh yeah, they beat the hell out of some dude, and like the cops never arrested them, like, you know, that kind of vigilante justice. And as you go further back in time, like you go to the Wild West, and I don't know, somebody attacked your sister, I'm sure you'd just find him and put a bullet in his head, right? I mean, like, why wouldn't you? You know, there's no video cameras, no fingerprints. Yeah, you just get that guy out on the range and say, hey, you know, my sister says hi, kablamo. You think it's a possibility anyone else will go in and help? Oh, God, I hope not, because that means escalation. I don't think they need help. Well, I mean, the Ukrainians need help, but who the hell's, I mean, how do Western countries help? Oh, here's a bunch of money and guns. Knock yourself out. Oh, our friends back here made a bunch of money. Hooray. That's the way Western countries help. They make a bunch of money for their locals selling weapons, which really they made the taxpayers pay for. How much carnage does Russia have to cause? I don't know. I mean, again, it's all about optics. If Putin feels he can now have a peace deal and take the Donbass region and the other things he wants, and the Ukrainians are like, okay, we put up a fight, but now we have to negotiate. You know, if the Ukrainians are going to draw a red line in the sand and say not 1 inch, it's going to be bloody. It's going to be bloody. Wasn't Ukraine constantly on the verge of civil war on the best days anyway? Yeah, it was, even before we started mucking around in it more directly. And that's, again, one of the reasons we got to stay the F out of there, because you have the Russian separatists. They want to be in the Federation. You have the Ukrainians who hate all the Russians for historical reasons and probably some current reasons too. The Russians ran the Ukraine. My understanding, I think we were the ones to oust their president initially and help get guys like Zelensky in. Again, part of the reason Zelensky got in is because of the bad guys from Germany types. They're not German, they're Ukrainians, but they admire the bad guys from Germany, I'll say. And that's a problem right there, you know. And from a human rights standpoint, do you want those guys in charge? I don't think you do. But they're the bully boys of the Ukraine. And, you know, and look at what Putin said. See, this is why Antifa and the other commie idiots in this country, we're going to fight fascism. You got to punch a bad guy from Germany. Yeah, now Putin's using the same excuse to go in there. Remember what happened in Maiden Square? Which one was that? Are you talking about Tiananmen Square? Or are you talking about another thing? That was insane. You're talking about Tiananmen Square? In Beijing in China? Why you respond. I know there's a bit of a delay. I'm going to check the next headline I had called up. Anti-illegal immigration. Poland takes over 100,000 Ukrainians as genuine refugees. Yeah, good on them. Biden White House asked Congress to approve $6.4 billion in aid for the Ukraine. Yeah, I'm sure. Maiden Square in the Ukraine. No, I don't know that specific incident. Was that part of the separatist thing? Was that big fight for the separatists? I think I know what you're talking about. I didn't know what it was called. I tried to find Putin's speech, but it seems like there's a part missing. Like 10 years ago. Yeah. There's a great documentary on it called Winter of Fire. Yeah, I think that was right around the time of the Crimea, maybe. Yeah, so 10 years ago, 2012, 2014 is when they took the Crimea. Yeah. I vaguely remember hearing about something around that time. But the $6.4 billion in aid from the United States to the Ukraine that Biden wants? No. And let me tell you why. Number one, is Ukraine even going to be around? Right? If the Russians take it, it's pointless. Number two, you keep pouring money into these countries, and what do you get out of it? We don't get anything. We as a people don't get anything. If you Google an image, you will know instantly what I mean. All right, I'll do that later. I got too many things right now. Yeah, so $6.4 billion. We got problems here. Okay, we got issues here. He wants to blow $6.4 billion in the Ukraine. Big no from me. Big no. We don't have that kind of money to just be tossing it around. We should, look, you want to send them some humanitarian aid, a little bit of humanitarian aid. I get it. Let's get a charity rolling. That's fine. But $6.4 billion, that's like a feeding frenzy for all the government contractors. Can we just park a load of tanks and helicopters on the border and for the Ukrainians to take? It's too late for that. It's too late. And again, I don't want to arm guys who like the bad guys from Germany. I didn't want to arm them at all. Arming people. No, I say no. I think the United States should take this kind of position. Officially, as a government, we don't arm anybody else but ourselves. Now, we're a free society with capitalistic, a driving force, let's say. If you want to sell weapons to the Ukraine, personally, knock yourself out. We don't care. You want to buy a boat and fill it full of weapons and take it to the Ukraine and sell it to them or give it to them. None of our business. We just let people do whatever the F they want. And people would do that, right? You'd have a bunch of rich Ukrainians in this country say, hey, we got to gather up all the weapons. Anybody wants to help us arm the Ukraine. And they'd take a bunch of weapons and they'd put them in a ship or plane and ship them to the Ukraine. Maybe they'd get there. Maybe the Russians would shoot them down, whatever. You know what it wouldn't start? It's World War III. But that's none of our business. I don't think we should be taking an official, line either way. Sup, Justin? Thanks for joining us. Talking about the Ukraine. So much to talk about. So much Ukrainian stuff. Remember what Washington said. No entangling alliances. I'm against NATO. F NATO. We don't need NATO. NATO was part of the problem. If you're going to have NATO, well, then use it wisely. And the wise thing would have been to say, no, we won't let Ukraine join NATO. We'll sign a paper. And then if the Russians cross the border, you'd just be in the same position. We'd be in the same exact position and having lost nothing. We would have taken care of the situation diplomatically. And I think Putin would have been okay with that. I think he would have said, okay, they signed the document. We're still going to watch them to make sure they're not sneaking weapons into the Ukraine. But, you know, why do we have, yeah, good question. Why do we have NATO? Well, the question is, why do we have NATO now? Like, I understand why we had it before. It was the Cold War, whatever. That's a whole thing. But yeah, we certainly don't need NATO now. But they're creating a reason why we need NATO. They're creating an enemy in the Russians that we didn't necessarily have. We had good relationships with the Russians for a while, and we could have had great relationships if we just said, "Hey, let's have world peace." You know, it's the Chinese we have to worry about. The Chinese are the problem. They're the ones who do horrible things to the Uyghurs. So, you know, and look, the Federation, it's corrupt as hell, but it's still a system by which we can decorrupt things. And Putin's not going to live forever. There'll be another guy, and the next guy will probably be better than Putin. And if we had world peace, or at least peace with the Russians, we could team up with the Russians, you know, shut down the Chinese. Oh, we'd shut them down in a heartbeat. You know, we'd be better off teaming up with the Russians. And I think Trump saw that immediately when he became president. You know, we team up with the Russians and we crush the Chinese, crush them right out of the markets, crush them right out of everything. Let the Russians build a bunch of factories and make money. Who cares? If they're our friends, and our business partners, they're not going to bomb us. What's the saying? Trade or goods cross borders, our armies will, right? So imagine we go into, we make peace with Russia. We start, and Trump would have done this, developing real estate, right? We start helping them build plazas like in New Jersey, right? We build like Hallmark greeting card stores and McDonald's and all these little places, all this service industry crap we have all here, right? They need that stuff, right? They need industry. We build them factories and all that crap. We invest in them heavily. Now we got money there. Oh my God, we're making money hand over fist. The Russians aren't going to kill us. They're going to be like, wow, we're making a lot of money. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Yeah, kind of. But like, your friends could be your friends. We could make friends with Russia. I don't see any reason why we can't be friends with Russia. Now, it doesn't mean they won't stick it to us. So you got to watch them, especially, you know, when you're number two. But this idea that we constantly have to be at war with Russia. Well, we got to be at war with Russia. They're evil people. Maybe, but not. I mean, it's not genetic. I mean, eventually they're going to get with the program. They have. Look, it's an incredibly corrupt system. It's to some extent an oligarchy, but our system's corrupt too. It's just ours is less corrupt and more of a constitutional republic than the Russians are. But we can drag them towards that. We're not dragging the Chinese towards that. We're just handing them money. I thought China and Russia were allies. Well, yeah, now they are. We've driven them together. But keep in mind, the Chinese screwed the Russians. The Russians built this pipeline to China, and then Putin went over to sign the deal, and the Chinese changed the terms of the agreement at the last minute, and he got pissed. And I think he stormed out of China, and eventually they signed a deal, but like, it was basically like, oh, we agreed on, a 40% rate or whatever. I don't know how oil works. And then then they got in there and the Chinese said, oh, no, we'd like 60%. You know, so it was that's the communist. You know, they spent millions and millions of dollars building a pipeline that was going to make them money. They needed the money. And then the Chinese said, F you, give us another 10% or 20% or whatever. And Putin, they had him over a barrel. And that's the way negotiation works at that level. But the Chinese, like, unlike another country, like, imagine we did that, right? So we cut a deal with the Russians, say we had peace. And then they come over here to sign the deal. And then at the last minute, we screw them. Like we utterly screw them and say, no, we want 80% of the profits. Well, the Russians would be mad. They would leave, but then there would be media coverage of it. And that media, even our horrible media, it would leak out and we'd look like a-holes. And it would give the Russians justification and it would be a battle of optics. That's what happens in Western societies and democracies. That doesn't happen in China. China screwed the Russians, and then the next day their media just said, oh, we didn't screw the Russians. They're a bunch of a-holes. I'm altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further. Yes. What else we got here? Russian cargo ship detained by France in the English Channel. See, now all this kind of crap's happening. Ukraine citizens urged to make Molotov cocktails against Russian tanks rolling through cities. Yes, I've seen that footage. Though that is ballsy. That is ballsy, man, because that tank could just turn around with a 50 caliber and down the alley you're hiding in, just blanket the stuff with bullets, and you're toast. But man, gutsy Ukrainians, I got to say. And apparently Molotov cocktails are incredibly effective against troop transports and tanks. I guess, if you hit them with enough Molotov cocktails, the whole thing could blow up, right? The ordnance inside. But man, you should see that footage. Google that footage. From Breitbart poll, 33% of Americans approve of Biden's handling of Russian-Ukraine conflict. 33%. And this is the main reason we won't go into the conflict. Right? I mean, if it would drop like even more. If 33% is terrible rating. It's a terrible rating. That means 2/3 of the United States is like, Biden, you've effed this up. And if they knew anything about it, yeah, they know he effed it up royally. God, I wish I could show you this one. I may show this in another video. But on Al Jazeera, there's an article called Russia-Ukraine Mapping Anti-War Protests Around the World. And it's mostly about anti-war protests around the world, but there's quite a few. But there's a map of the Ukraine, and it shows you the separatist areas. Donetsk and Luhansk. I can't pronounce these names. And they're right on the border of Russia. And you see how gigantic the Ukraine is. It's huge. It's just absolutely massive. So a German YouTuber I'm subscribed to is scared Russia is going to go after Germany and Poland. You think that's something that could happen? It could happen. I don't think the Russians have any designs. Not now. I mean, talk to me in 10 years when things change. But they're not going after Poland. No one in NATO is in any danger right now. They don't want to start World War III. It's mainly, Putin's not stupid. He's going to get in there. He's going to consolidate his gains. That's what a lot of these guys don't understand. Like, these people are like, oh, empire. Yeah, the guys who start an empire, they expand until they collapse. The bad guys from Germany, that's what they did. They expanded, and then they collapsed. The Soviet Union, same deal. And that's the lesson Putin knows. You can't expand too far. It just collapses underneath you. You have to expand and then consolidate your gains. And there's some parts of the world you don't want. You don't want Afghanistan. Obviously, that was the Soviet Union's last mistake. Oh boy, we got Afghanistan. This will be fun. Mountains. It's purely an ego thing for Putin. I mean, I'm sure that plays into it, but he's playing on the world stage. He's got all his money, he's got all his fame and power, but this is also about survival for him. If he lets NATO indoctrinate the Ukraine, and then, just like Turkey, we have missiles in Turkey aimed at Russia and China, I assume, I hope. He doesn't want that. So it's partly survival. He wants a statue in Red Square. Well, I'm sure he'll get one. He's very popular. He's a Russian nationalist. He's very popular. Hollywood ate my baby. Do you think Biden will ever take that cognitive test? No, because he'll fail it. He'll absolutely fail it. If he ever takes it, I wouldn't believe the results anyway if he passes. I don't know why they don't just bribe a doctor and do that and say, okay, we need you to give the president a glowing review on his cognitive test. And here's $1 million. And the doctor goes, okay. Like, why don't they do that? I guess we're not that corrupt. I guess they don't think they can pull it off. It's just probably also easier for him to go, no. Because I think he's unraveled. I mean, like, you watch him. Watch me heckle him in that speech. The guy stammers and stammers. He can't get through a paragraph now. He needs reminders and cards. He walks like an old man. Look, I know people that age, some of them, they're fit as a fiddle, man. But when you're that old, at some point, you see that moment. You see the moment like, oh, he's old now. Yeah, it just happens to you. Something, either you fall down or your body just starts the he's at that point. He's at that point. He should not be president. He just shouldn't be in there. Yeah, I watched your reaction video. He's really losing it now. Yeah. Did I miss one? Yes, I did. I don't know if you talked about this, but what do you think about the Democrats who want the U.S. to go to war because they think Biden would win another term? First off, they're stupid. They're stupid partisan hacks. If this were Trump, they'd be screaming the opposite thing that Trump wanted. First off, it wouldn't even happened under Trump. But if Trump, let's say Trump screwed up and sent troops to defend Ukraine or bombed Russia or whatever, everybody would scream and see Trump is a warmonger. How old is Putin? I don't know off the top of my head, but he's getting up there. He's not a spring chicken. He was in the KGB when the Soviet Union was still around. So he'd have to be, got to figure he'd be in his 30s and the 90s. So he's got to be at least in his 60s, approaching 70. I think he's probably at the point where, this is his legacy, probably taking back this region, get your third warm water port, consolidate those gains, and then pass on the baton to somebody else, depending. But you never know. Some of these guys, they never get enough of this. Trump is one of those guys, right? He thrives on this stuff. Wow. He looks younger than he did when he entered office. He's like the only president. He looks better now than when he entered into office. He dropped like 30 pounds and now he's getting into shape. It's crazy. Putin's 69. Yep. Sounds about right. Last gasp for him. Yeah. I don't know. Talk to me when you're in your 60s. It's funny. When you get older, it's like, I'm 55. I'm going to be 56 in about 2 weeks. I used to think, oh, that guy's 40. Yeah, he's old. He's old. And, somebody in their 50s, an old man. He's got gray hair. They're going to die soon. Then you get into your 50s and you hear about, oh, that guy was 50. He was only 58. Oh my God, he was only 58 and he died. That's the way it is. In terms of being a leader, yeah, he's been doing it forever too. It's true. It's also true, all that power, he might have reached the point where I can't retire because no one else can do what I do. And to some extent, it's right, because to get to that position, you kind of got to destroy all your rivals to some extent. And then in that process, it leaves no one else to step up because he's kind of destroyed all those guys. But I think, when you're hitting 69, you're starting to get old. Although the guy's in shape, the guy's in shape. Thank you. So, hopefully, I would like to think if I was in his position, yeah, this would be like, this is my last big thing. I'm going to go out on a blaze of glory. I'm going to do this, consolidate my gains, negotiate a peace deal, and look like a great guy. He's entrenched on another level, yeah. And then go retire and let the younger people take over. I don't know if he has a successor, really. So it's hard. I don't know that much about Russian politics other than, Putin and Gary Kasparov and, Pussy Riot. I think they're all in jail right now. Few more headlines. Breitbart Representative Gallagher rips Biden's failed hashtag diplomacy, urges mother of all sanctions on predator Putin over Ukraine. Yeah, I don't think he'll get those sanctions. Jim Jordan says it would be nice if equipment we left in Afghanistan was in the Ukraine. Great soundbite, dude. Great soundbite. Let's see. Another Al Jazeera headline. Russia-Ukraine live updates battles rage for Ukraine cities. Yeah, Al Jazeera would be a decent news source regarding this because I don't think they have a horse in this fight. But Governor Rep Moore, or GOP Rep Moore, woke leadership at Pentagon a concern on heels of Russian-Ukraine invasion. Yes. Yeah, that's been a concern, I think. The woke retards over at the Pentagon. God, you got to get rid of Miley. Miley's the face of that now. Get rid of him and most of your optics problem are solved. But, this is going to be something, yet another thing the GOP can run on, right? I mean, certainly Trump is going to mention the woke morons at the Pentagon at this point. We got to get rid of them. They all have to be fired. Anyone who's woke cannot be in a position of power anymore. The wokeness it rots the brain. It creates a system under which, people can be intimidated for nonsense reasons. You're making decisions based on, immutable traits, not on merit. It's why you're going to get diversity hires who don't know their job. And that's no good for anybody. It's bad for the diversity hire. Yeah, they get some money, but then they're incompetent at their job. They can't be fired. Guess what that turns into? A mess. If you've ever, worked with someone who is in a situation like that, they couldn't be fired. It's like working with the boss's son, right? I won't say who it was, but I worked at a place where the boss's son worked with me. And he was a bit of a nightmare. He wasn't that bad. He was nice to me, and he didn't steal money or anything, but he wouldn't work. He didn't do much work, that's for sure. And what little work he did, if he got annoyed by a customer, he'd just tell him to go F himself. He didn't care. He knew he couldn't be fired, and that's what you get with a diversity hire. A real diversity hire. The SCOTUS pick, right? She's completely undermined now, right? Because Biden was so stupid as to come out and say, we need a black woman as SCOTUS. I understand that they were probably going to pick someone like that. Fine, do that. But, at least make a show out of it, you dummy. Don't announce that we can only pick a woman of color. Just pick one. Just pick one and then let the Republicans go, I don't know. And then you could call them all racist. That would have been a better strategy. They're just devoid of strategy at this point. How could we let the superficial people take over control of political discourse? I know exactly why. Because political stuff is boring to most people. And look, I'm a political junkie. I'm different. So I was into this stuff back in the 90s. I got into antiwar.com. I started reading about the Kosovo War, and I'm like, holy crap, man, this crazy stuff's going on. And then people would say, shut up. I go, no, you don't understand. It's not really a genocide, man. Yeah, it's the military-industrial complex, man. And people would they didn't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to, so what? So what? Republicans bad, Democrats good. I mean, Orange Man bad. Now all these people have a political opinion, and that's even worse because they're uneducated. They're low information voters, and now they're all over social media giving their hot takes, and they don't know nothing. They don't know nothing. You know, they don't know the basics. When you tell people about the history of the Ukraine and say Ukrainians effing hate the Russians, they starved them to death for 50 years. Like, oh, but that was so long ago. Yeah, history. History is important. Like, I don't know much, but I know a bit of history. And that gives you a perspective that, you know, you can't predict everything, but you can see certain patterns in history. This is a pattern in history. They've been fighting over the Crimea for like hundreds of years. Not 100 years, hundreds of years. Because that region is a choke point for trade. You know, before, 300 years ago, it was about trade. It was a port, and you need ports for trade. Now it's about military stuff. F the trade. You got planes now. You didn't have planes 300 years ago, but now it's about those nuclear subs. Now, if the nuclear subs go away, let's say, laser satellites become the next deterrent, which isn't too far off, then it's all about space. Then it'll be like, I don't care about the Crimea. It'll probably be more about the space you have in terms of your country, which is why Russia will be a big player in that, because you won't be able to put satellites over Russia, and whoever wins the satellite war, essentially wins the planet. It's a shame they're not triggered by being called too lazy to think. They're not triggered by anything. Understand, again, what the woke do. They want virtue points. They don't care about the actual issues. They don't care about your actual reaction. They only care about looking good. So are they triggered? They're only triggered if that then leads to more virtue points. That's the only reason. So you could say stuff all day long, the N-word goes right by them sometimes, unless there's an opportunity to say, whoa, right? I mean, these people, some of these woke idiots actually say those words. Some of them are like hardcore racist about certain things. They don't care. It's not about that. It's not about having principle. It's about looking good on the internet. It's about looking good, but mostly on the internet. So they have no shame. These are IG models, celebrities. Yeah, I've seen some artwork for the whole, I can never pronounce this name and I never remember it. Holodomor. It's pretty awful, pure nightmare fuel. It really is. If you read about that, I mean, the Ukrainians suffered terribly under the Russians. But the real virtue is the complexity of the world, which they don't get. Yeah, they don't have time for that because it's not about them. Well, it's not about the world. It's about them. Everything's about them. Everybody who's woke is all about them. They turn everything to them. These woke teachers who come out to their students, I announced today that I'm gay. Why? Why would you do that to a 5th grade class? They have absolutely no business being involved in your personal life. There is no reason for them to know one way or the other, who you date, who you sleep with. There is nothing for those children to know about you. They don't need to know what you eat in the morning. They don't need to know where you go on the weekends. They don't need to know your medical conditions. They don't need to know so many things they don't need to know about you. What they need to know is things that educate them. They need to know about, for instance, the history of the Ukrainian people, so they can make informed decisions about their government, whether or not they're going to support them. And instead, it's all about me. And I cannot tell you how much it infuriates me. And then I had a couple more links over at antiwar.com. There's a great op-ed called Sleepy Joe's Ukraine Hypocrisy is Truly Beyond Measure by David Stockman. And there's a bunch of headlines over to you about this over at antiwar.com. I think I'm going to save that for a video later because I forgot I can't bring up anything yet here on SteamYard, but definitely check out antiwar.com. I mean, like, I tell people that and they go, well, antiwar.com, they're biased and they have a position. It's a great aggregate site and they're more journalistic about it. And they try not to take, they have people from both sides of the aisle who are anti-war. So if you're anti-war, you can go there and you can see op-eds from either side of the aisle and lots of other great things. So I highly recommend antiwar.com. And, it gives you a good perspective, I think. Read it for years. Really great site. Oh, excuse me. So, but yeah, in terms of the woke and virtue signaling going on Twitter and God, everywhere else, it's gross. I mean, I'm a single guy. I'm on the dating apps and I'm swiping through people. Once in a while, I'll come across people who still have the translucent France flag across their picture. Remember that when we're all French now. When Charlie Hebdo thing happened, I think it was Charlie Hebdo that set that off, or one of the horrible massacres in France. And all these people were virtue signaling about France all of a sudden, like they knew anything about France and the immigration situation over there, which is out of control, still out of control for the most part. Although Macron kind of stepped back from it, but he's still in the European Union, and the European Union is still letting everybody in. So, yeah, it's what happened to my camera? Oh my God, my camera just went blurry for some reason. Is it telling me it's time? I think it's time for me to wrap this up. I don't know what happened to my camera just then. It's weird. It's the first time that's happened. Well, I was gonna about to wrap this. So anybody have any questions? Give me your final question. It's still me, everybody. It's still me. Why did that happen? Oh, great. I have a technical thing to do. So just to wrap here, my thoughts on the Ukraine are this: we should stay out of it. Number one, we shouldn't, and I mean completely out of it. Sure, we should try to say that to Putin now. We could still say, listen, okay, we will keep the Ukrainians out of NATO if you'll just stop this horrible war and cut a deal. And we should sit down at the table and try to cut that deal and not be a-holes about it and just try to stop the war as quickly as possible. That would be my advice to Biden. Will he take it? Oh, absolutely not. No. They're too busy positioning themselves so they could send $6.4 billion of aid to the Ukraine and skim, millions of dollars off the top for their politically connected buddies who will supply God knows what the Ukrainians need to rebuild their infrastructure because moolah. I think we should make peace with the Russians as well. Obviously, this isn't a good time. So really, my attitude right now is we got to get through the rest of this year, get to 2022, get the Democrats out of Congress, take over, have the Republicans take over, stop everything that Biden's screwing up, probably impeach him too, and Harris, maybe impeach everybody down the line until you get to a Republican, and then hopefully mitigate some of this damage we've taken over the last year, open the Keystone Pipeline again if we can, and a bunch of other things, and then fortify the elections properly. Not that they need fortifying, YouTube, honk honk, wink wink, and then fix everything in 2024, assuming we're not all murdered in a cloud of radioactive dust. Hollywood ate my baby. Did you end up watching the Timcast with the Daily Wire movie guy? No, I still haven't watched it yet. So many videos to watch, so little time, but I should watch that one. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. In fact, maybe that's what I'll do now. Grab some lunch, see what little Joan is barking at. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's live chat. A lot of great comments today. I'm loving this. Loving the oh, there it is. Now it's clear again. Thank you, camera. What are you doing to me? Anyhow, this is Tony D speaking for little Joan. We'll see you in the next one.